Hello. Today, I would like to talk about the mental health industry. I have been on both sides of the desk as both therapist and client. I have been on both sides of the desk in a dual purpose rehab. But I've also been in the psychological field as a client for, the span of 4 decades. I have seen the differences in theories. And yes, I may have been a child in the 80s, but I was not your typical child. I absorbed quite a bit of information and retained that data for later in life. Now, I began therapy when I was 3-4 years old. It was even before I began kindergarten. And prior to that, I had already had a significant amount of trauma. So by the time I was 4 years old, I was already told that I would never heal. I specifically remember that from my very first session. They told me that I would be like this for the rest of my life. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be like this the rest of my life. And I remember the different tests, the different psychological tests that I was given as a child. I remember, taking an ADHD, ADD test in the 90s on a computer that was still black and green. And I remember them saying that my attention was delayed. But I didn't see it as delayed so much as boredom. They wanted me to click a button every time something flashed on the screen. I wasn't paying attention to the screen. No, I was bored. It flashed like at random times. And to be completely honest with you, I've done this test again as an adult in a different way. And it was difficult. But at the same time, I could read an entire novel in less than 2 hours. It wasn't attention that was a problem. It was my lack of desire to do the test that they wanted me to do. I could maintain my focus for days on end when I hyperfocus. And I can do an exorbitant amount of research in that time. I was the same way as a child. I just wasn't interested in the things they wanted me to learn. And I wasn't interested in their therapy either. And I have seen the major changes in the psychological world for 4 decades. What we didn't understand then, we still don't understand now. Yes, we have different imagery from brain scans, and we have tests to be able to test this or that particular disorder. However, do we actually understand the disorders of which we diagnose? Or is it still considerably theory? If we look at the science of psychology, yes, I know that some people don't consider it a science, but if we look at the science of psychology and compare it to like the psychology of like physics, it's a very, very young science. And yet, we're so hell-bent on controlling these disorders with medications. without any understanding of, is there a way to learn how to live the way we were intended to live naturally? We aren't random. We aren't. Every single thing about us, especially if you look at the genetics and predisposition of specific mental disorders, it's not random. Is it a defect or is it a form of evolution? Are we misdiagnosing it as a problem instead of trying to find the solution? When we label people as mentally ill, or having a disorder, we create a complex within that person, further exacerbating problems. When you look at a person and tell them they will have to be on medication for the rest of their lives in order to live a normal life, do you understand the implications of your words? Do you know what you are assigning to that person? When I was working as a therapist, I saw the world differently. I saw mental illness differently. I don't see it the same way anymore. I see the stigma that is applied to people. I see the damage it causes in their life. I have met people like myself who live perfectly happy lives like myself. Even if we are misunderstood by the populace, that doesn't make us wrong. If my extremes weren't so volatile, I wouldn't know how to find balance. I have a unique way of healing. It is unlike anything that I've ever learned or anything I've ever seen. And it has helped me tremendously. I don't see anything about my mental health as a problem. I see it as a solution. And this is very different from the way that I was raised. And I couldn't be happier. So, I see a need for us to re-examine the mental health field. I know that this isn't like, the type of system that is rewritten overnight. But I think that we need to start re-examining all of our data. We're taking snippets and trying to separate them when they're all the same. We can't do that anymore. We need to bring all of the pieces together, because if we don't, the puzzle will never be completed. So, let's get started. Bye, guys.